Well, a very good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking at this hour. The G20 Sherpa's track under India's presidency kicks off in Udaipur. USA's Deputy NSA Mike Pyle tells CNBC-TV18 that America will continue to look for more ways to impose costs on Russia, says that only one man can end the war, and that is Putin. German G20 Sherpa says Chancellor Scholz has always said that it's important to maintain dialogue with the Russian leader. Global crude oil prices rise after OPEC nations and allies, including Russia, agree to keep production targets unchanged. This, even as G7 and European Union's $60 per barrel price cap on Russian crude comes into effect. Easing of COVID restrictions by China also helps. RBI's three-day monetary policy meet starts today. CNBC-TV18 Citizens MPC unanimously votes for a 35 BPS hike ahead of the rate decision on December 7th, but adds that RBI may have to tweak its stance to indicate huge uncertainty about the next policy steps.
India is the workforce for the world. Between now and 2050, India will be home to over 20% of the global workforce.
The McKinsey Global Board meets in India. Managing partner Bob Sternfeld says that the future of supply chains run through India, but asserts the importance of reimagining globalization rather than embarking on a decoupling drive. Oyo decides to lay off 600 employees and hire 250 as a part of a wide-ranging changes in organizational structure. Health FIME also decides to trim its workforce, citing growth concerns, will lay off 142 employees, amounting to 7% of its workforce. Three suitors submit binding bids for the bankrupt Shree Group firms as deadline ends. A consortium of Varde Partners and Arena investors, NARCL and Autham Investment, submit plans. The Varde Arena consortium likely to have made the highest bid at 14,000 crore rupees. Nick Reed is all set to step down as Vodafone CEO at the end of the year. Finance chief Margarita Della will take over as interim chief. The company is struggling in the European markets and the stock is down more than 40% since Reed took over in 2018. "93 constituencies across central and north Gujarat go to polls in the second and final phase. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah and Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel cast their vote. Results will be announced on the 8th of December. China gives in after several days of widespread protests, announces the easing of many COVID-19 restrictions, but maintains that its zero-COVID strategy is still in place. 2 new COVID-related deaths are reported over the weekend. Iran's Attorney General hints that the country's morality police has been disbanded following months of protests sparked by the custodial death of Mahsa Amini. But there's no official declaration. Protests continue, as many say disbanding the unit will not mean the strict laws governing women will change. Well, let's begin. A choppy session of trade saw the Nifty and Sensex end the day flat. The broader markets outperformed the benchmark indices. IT stocks were a major drag on Nifty, while metals did well. Meanwhile, the rupee ended the day marginally higher versus Friday's figures. However, slipped by 55 paise from today's opening highs against the US dollar. Meanwhile, global crude prices have risen after OPEC nations and allies, including Russia, agreed to keep production targets unchanged. This even as the G7 and European Union's $60 per barrel price cap on Russian crude comes into effect. Easing of COVID restrictions by China also helps. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired an all-party meeting at the Rashtrapati Bhavan ahead of the G20 summit next year. Home Minister Amit Shah, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Chief Ministers from several states attended the meeting. Well, the G20 Sherpa's track under the India's presidency kicks off in Udaipur. USA's Deputy NSA Mike Pyle tells CNBC-TV18 that America will continue looking for more ways to impose costs on Russia. Says that only one man can end the war, and that is Vladimir Putin. German G20 Sherpa, meanwhile, said that Chancellor Scholz has always said that it's important to maintain dialogue with the Russian leader. Parishad Luthra now gets us all the action from Udaipur.
Our G20 presidency would seek to advocate the oneness of all in accordance with our theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future. And our priorities will reflect not just the aspirations of all of you, the G20 partners, but also the Global South, whose voice is often unheard.
India has proposed a Green Development Pact as central to global growth at this meeting. There were also extensive consultations between emerging economies on how to have a greater say in the G20 decision-making process. Let's listen in to Amitabh Kant, the G20 Sherpa for India, laying out India's priorities.
See, there can't be a package for one segment. There has to be a package for the Global South. That is what the Prime Minister has emphasized, that he will be the voice of the Global South.
Now to the big message from the United States. America and India have a shared interest on the oil price cap, and US will continue looking for ways to impose a cost on Russia for the Russia-Ukraine war.
Ultimately, this war can be ended at any moment at the decision of one man, Vladimir Putin in Russia. In the meantime, we're focused on standing beside the Ukrainian people, continuing to impose costs on Russia's economy and ability to wage war, and working with the rest of the world, including through the G20, including alongside India's presidency, to relieve and reduce the stresses that Russia's war of choice is having on the rest of the world.
Chancellor, throughout the war, has had a very strong condemnation of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, but he has maintained the dialogue with the Russian president on humanitarian issues, on the issue of the export of fertilizers, of grains, of humanitarian support. So in that sense, having the dialogue is something that is well coordinated within the G7 and within the partner countries.
Coming to an agreement on the G20 outcomes is going to be a challenging task for India. The G20 communique is going to be discussed and drafted at least 4 times before being agreed upon during the leaders' meeting in September 2023.
Well, the RBI's 3-day monetary policy meeting started today. CNBC-TV18 unanimously, in fact, voted for a 35 BPS hike ahead of the rate decision on December 7th, but added that the RBI may have to tweak its stance to indicate huge uncertainty about the next policy steps.
What is the Reserve Bank expected to do on December 7th to the repo rate? Shaumya.
We are penciling in a 35 basis point rate hike.
Okay. Sajid?
A 35 basis point rate hike.
Samiran?
Same 35 basis.
Okay, this is getting easy for the chairman. Sonal?
35.
35, okay. Dr. Sen, you go with your panel or you're different?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, okay. 35 basis rate hike is what the Citizens MPC is voting for, but everyone's pointing out that the RBI may have to change the stance. The current MPC stance is withdrawal of accommodation. The stance is we are withdrawing accommodation. Will they change, Soumya?
No, I think they will keep it as withdrawal of accommodation, maybe with a little tweaks around the statement.
Sajid?
Withdrawal of accommodation with some tweaks to give the two-sided optionality.
So no change, no change. Samiran?
No change, not too much.
Okay. Sonal?
Withdrawal of accommodation, but with the tweaks I mentioned earlier.
Okay. Dr. Sen?
Withdrawal of accommodation with a hint towards neutral.
Meanwhile, three suitors submitted binding bids for the bankrupt Shree Group firms as deadline ends. A consortium of Valde partners and Arena investors, NARCL and Autumn Investments submitted plans. The Valde Arena consortium is likely to have made the highest bid at 14,000 crore rupees. Ritu Singh now joins us with more details. Ritu, tell us, what are you picking up?
Well, Ashmit, to begin with, there were 7 suitors that had expressed interests in acquiring the Tway Shree Group companies under the IBC. But like you said, only 3 binding bids have come forward as the deadline ended on the 2nd of December. The first one is from the Valde Arena Consortium, which has been in the running from the start. No surprises there. But we have been given to understand that the offer from them, although it's revised down from their earlier indications at 14,000 crore rupees, is still the highest among the 3 offers that the lenders have received. The second offer has come in from Autumn Investments, which has made an offer of about 3,400 crore rupees. And the third binding offer has come in from NARCL, which is National Asset Reconstruction Company, which has made an offer of 13,600 crore rupees, is what we've been given to understand. Remember, these are just headline figures. Not all of this is cash or equity. There will be various components to these offers, but as per the headline numbers, Valde Arena does look to be the highest bidder. However, the Committee of Creditors, we understand, will be meeting later this week to see if all of these bids meet the legal criteria, and then negotiate with the bidders to see if these offers can be improved upon further. Prudent ARC, Edelweiss and ArcelorMittal are some of the other bidders that did not submit a bid when the deadline ended, but had earlier shown an interest. Remember, there are claims of over 32,700 crores that Shrey is facing. So even with the highest offer of 14,000 crore rupees, there is a steep haircut that lenders are looking at.
Right, Ritu, thanks a lot for that update. On to the telecom space now. Vodafone Chief Executive Nick Reed is set to step down as the CEO of the group after 4 years at the helm. He will be leaving by the end of December and will be replaced by Vodafone's Chief Financial Officer, Margarita Della Valle, on an interim basis. Now, the move comes after Vodafone witnessed flat earnings for its first half this year. On to the aviation space, SpiceJet has announced that its operations and safety processes have been found to be in order by the International Civil Aviation Organization. The budget carrier was the only scheduled Indian airline which was a part of the ICAO audit. Now, the examination of SpiceJet safety systems helped India achieve its highest ever safety ranking in the ICAO audit. Staying with the aviation space, Air India has leased 12 more aircraft, which includes 6 new Airbus narrow-body and 6 Boeing wide-body ones. This will be with an aim to boost its domestic and overseas operations. The company, in a statement, said, and I quote, "These additional aircraft leases will support our near-term growth, even as we finalize plans to refresh and significantly grow our long-term fleet," unquote. Meanwhile, Indigo has introduced 32 connecting flights between India and Europe. Flights to Milan, Rome, Venice, Manchester and Birmingham will commence from the 7th of December, though the airline's codeshare partnership with Turkish Airlines. Delta Corp will look to raise 550 crore rupees via Delta Tech's gaming D-Street debut. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, the company's chairman Jaydev Modi said that it will continue to hold 70 to 75% in Delta Tech Gaming post the IPO. Listen in.
Roughly 250 crores and 250 crores which come into Delta because we are diluting our holding in Delta Tech Gaming, and about 300 crores into the company itself for organic and inorganic growth. After post-IPO, Delta will still own 70 to 75% of Delta Tech Gaming, and the balance will be public.
Oyo Hotels has decided to lay off 600 employees and hire about another 250 as a part of their organization restructure. In a statement, the company defended its move, saying that they are shutting down projects and merging teams. Online health app, meanwhile, Healthify Me, has also decided to lay off 7% of its staff, citing growth concerns. Shruti Mishra is joining us now with more details. Shruti, tell us, what are you picking up?
Yes, layoffs continue on Startup Street. Global hospitality player Oyo says it is restructuring its organization. It is downsizing its product and engineering, corporate headquarters and the Oyo vacation homes teams, while it adds people to the partner relationship management and the business development teams. Oyo will downsize nearly 10% of its 3,700 employee base, which includes fresh hiring of 250 members and letting go of 600 employees. The company said it will be helping as many employees as it can in the outplacement and continue with their medical insurance cover ranging between 3 months on an average. In fact, founder Ritesh Agarwal tweeted, and I quote, "Many talented Oyopreneurs are having to part ways with Oyo, and we want to ensure they receive as much assistance and support as possible." But the bad news doesn't end here. Health and fitness platform Healthify Me will trim its workforce, citing growth concerns. The firm has already laid off 142 employees, or 7% of its 2,000 plus employees. The move has impacted 79, that is 6% of its employees from the operations team, and 63, which is 23% of the core team. Healthify Me will be offering 2 months of salary as severance and will extend medical coverage until June 2023. Indian startups have let go of over 18,000 employees since the start of 2022 as economic headwinds hurt business and growth projections get trimmed. Back to you.
And well, speaking of layoffs, tech giant Amazon plans to lay off around 20,000 employees in the coming months. Now, reports say that the company will be handing out pink slips to employees from distribution centers and technology department. This move comes after the company went on a hiring spree during the pandemic. India is the workforce of the world. That's the word coming in from Bob Sternfels, managing partner of McKinsey & Company. In a chat with CNBC-TV18, Shireen Bhan, Sternfels said that the future of supply chains runs through India, but asserts that the importance of reimagining globalization rather than embarking on a decoupling drive. Here's an exclusive conversation with the McKinsey top brass.
You look at the potential that is not unrealistic to sustain 7 to 8% GDP growth per year through India's 100th birthday in 2047. You look at the potential to move over 200 million people into the workforce from non-manufacturing jobs into manufacturing and other types of technology jobs. You look at the opportunity to add 200 million women to the workforce. So I get very excited about that potential, and it's really underpinned maybe by 3 things. One is this notion that India is the workforce for the world. Between now and 2050, India will be home to over 20% of the global workforce. Right? So this is the workforce for the world. The second is I think the future of supply chains runs through India. You're seeing this unfold as everyone starts to think about resilient supply chains.
I want to bring up 2 points. What Mark Zuckerberg said, that maybe we overestimated the growth expectations and the growth assumptions on the back of what the pandemic did, and we're now starting to dial that back a little bit, and which is what's resulting in the kind of layoffs that we're seeing. And 2, what Satya Nadella said, he said, look, don't think of tech jobs as people working with Meta or Twitter or whatever, but think of the auto companies because they're as tech can be. So do we need to change the narrative and the lens with which we look at this as well?
So there's 2 very different components there. Number one, as we look at the tech companies, did they get out a little bit ahead of them? Maybe. But then the question is the talent still needed? I think Katie pointed this. The talent is 100% still very much in demand, right? Because every company is becoming a tech company, right? You talk about whether it's the automotive company or whether it's the transportation companies, all of them are building new businesses. And I think that's really where some of the opportunity comes. It's not just the net new startup.
Well, you can catch that entire conversation at 9:30 p.m. right here on CNBC TV18. Time now for a short break, but coming up next, 93 constituencies across central and north Gujarat go to polls in the second and final phase. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah and CM Bhupendra Patel cast their votes. Details when we come back. Welcome back. Now, the winter session of Parliament is all set to begin on Wednesday. There are 16 bills slated to be introduced. These include proposing a globally compatible trademark registration system and tighter regulation of multi-state cooperative societies, among others. Abhimanyu Sharma gets us the latest on what to expect from the winter session.
As many as 16 new bills are slated to be introduced in the upcoming winter session of Parliament. It remains to be seen how many of them are going to be passed and which ones will be sent to a particular parliamentary committee for further consideration. The names of the bills, as mentioned in the circular issued by the Parliament as of now, are the Energy Conservation Amendment Bill 2022, the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill 2022, which aims to strengthen governance and bring more transparency to such bodies. Also, amendments to the Forest Conservation Act are also being considered as part of the government's agenda in the upcoming winter session. A bill to form Northeast Water Management Authority is also expected, apart from 4 amendments to the Scheduled Tribe Order, as well as the Trademarks Amendment Bill and Repealing and Amending Bill 2022. Also, the Mediation Bill 2021 and the Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill 2019 are all expected to be taken up in the session of Parliament. It remains to be seen what more is going to be introduced as part of the government's agenda, and whether there are going to be any significant objections to the same, which may lead to sending of these bills to any particular parliamentary committee.
Well, here's the big election update. Second and final phase of polling concluded in Gujarat across 93 constituencies. Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah and Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel cast their vote. Results will be announced on the 8th of December, along with Himachal Pradesh. Sticking to elections, by-elections were also held in 6 assembly constituencies in 5 states and the Lok Sabha constituency of Mainpuri in Uttar Pradesh. Now, the Mainpuri Lok Sabha seat fell vacant after the death of Samajwadi Party patriarch Mulayam Singh Yadav. Mulayam Singh's daughter-in-law, and Akhilesh Yadav's wife in the Samajwadi Party candidate, Raghuraj Singh Shakya, is the BJP candidate. The DMK filed a review petition in the Supreme Court seeking a review of the judgment that allows a 10% reservation of individuals from economically weaker sections. The party's plea has questioned why the case was not referred to a larger bench and has sought to be heard in an open court. Iran's Attorney General hints that the country's morality police has been disbanded following months of protests sparked by custodial death of Mahsa Amini, but there's no official declaration. Protests continue as many say that disbanding this unit will not mean that the strict laws governing women will change. Slight relief for Chinese citizens as the government gives in after several days of widespread protests, announces the easing of many COVID-19 restrictions, but maintains that its zero-COVID strategy is still in place. 2 new COVID-related deaths are reported over the weekend. A mission from Canada headed by Victor Fedeli, Minister of Economic Development and Trade from the Government of Ontario, was in India recently. The minister spoke to CNBC-TV18's Jusilia K about the job and investment opportunities in Canada and conversations around free trade agreement between both the countries. Listen in.
In Canada, we have free trade agreements that allow us to trade freely with 50 countries. And so we see a lot of countries entering the province of Ontario, setting up their businesses so they can export worldwide freely, as we do. So we would encourage both federal governments to continue their work towards coming to a free trade agreement.
Canadian startups coming to India and Indian startups going to Canada, how do you see that happen?
Yeah, it's definitely, the startups are definitely happening with Indian startups expanding in Ontario, and there's no question that Ontario startups look to India as well. We're both tech centers. Ontario is the #2 tech cluster in North America, behind Silicon Valley. We have 20,000 tech companies, several 100,000 tech employees, and Ontario is only a province of 14 million people. So we see real growth opportunities for our tech company startups here, but every week there are tech startups from India that come to Ontario to grow and to scale up.
So I would like to understand how do you, see the movement of people and students especially, because now that everything has opened up, they're looking at overseas opportunity to study and about also the job opportunities going forward.
A student perspective, the families know that Ontario is safe, and that's why we have 75,000 students. We also have 380,000 unfilled jobs in the province of Ontario today. We have 65,000 STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, and math graduates every year. We find jobs for them. We have employers looking to hire graduates. Come to Canada. Our immigration is open. The federal government has announced the opening of 500,000 annual immigrants. So let's work together and make sure that you are getting the education that you want in Canada and find a job and a place for your family.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you so much for watching. News and updates continue right here on CNBC TV18.